Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. The most important asset in any business is its people. So how do you attract the best performers and make sure that they stay? That's the challenge that business coach Shivani Gupta tackles in her book, Getting Your People to Step Up: 7 Simple Strategies to Attract and Keep Your Key Talent. Chris Ashmore begins by asking Shivani why it seems so hard to find the right people these days.
One of the things that's happening is the values of different generations is very different. And this is also the first time ever in history that we have 5 generations working in the workplace at the same time. So as managers and leaders and owners of businesses, one of the things that we need to do is that we really need to understand how the values are so different for each of those, and we need to be able to learn how to motivate them.
So where does it all start then? Is it about creating a business that's attractive for employees to work at? And if so, how do you do that?
One of my favourite quotes is by Brene Brown, and she talks about the fact that clear is kind. So I believe that one of the best ways in terms of having a business where you want to attract great people is being very clear with your vision. You know, why are you here? What do you stand for? How do you go about doing that? And really talk about the values, because when we've got a business that's very clear with its vision and very compelling vision, that's the way that people want to come and work. You know, I believe that people look for 3 things. They look for something to believe in, which is the vision. They look for someone to believe in, which is the leader. And they also look for that someone to believe in them, which is their self-belief. So when we have those 3 things happening, then people often want to come and work in those places.
And how is that vision created?
To create a really clear vision, you might already have a vision, but the clearer we become with that, the better it is. And so there's a lot of great strategies around in terms of how to create great vision. We want something that's very memorable. We want something that's very simple, that everybody can remember. And one of the things that we need to do as business leaders and owners is not only get very clear about the vision, we also need to have great ways that we need to be able to communicate the vision. Because when we can get our people to see what we see, that's when people really start to be able to go, okay, now I understand that bigger picture, and this is how I can actually work towards it. You know, for example, a parable that I share often in my speaking in my books, I speak about that, you know, there's people that are working on a little piece of rock. You go to somebody and you ask them, and the first person says, yes, I'm just working on a rock. And you ask the next person along and they say, I'm working and building a cathedral. So they can see that the little piece of work that they're doing on something is building the wall, is building something bigger. And when people get the context of vision, when they get what you're trying to build, then it becomes so much easier and clearer for them in terms of the part that they do to help realise that vision.
Do you have an example of any companies that are doing the vision thing well?
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at Amazon, you know, being the most customer-centric company in the world, I actually ordered something from them yesterday that will be delivered by 3 p.m. today. And so when you've got that vision, then everything around it, the people, the systems, the processes, then really are there to enable for that vision to be realised. You know, there are a lot of big companies that we look at, whether it's Apple or Amazon, a number of other places. But I also love the small to medium businesses that are doing that. They're taking that leaf out of the bigger companies and their books, and they're saying, how can we actually translate that into that? So even when you're a small business that's got 5 employees or 10 employees, really being very clear with that vision, like, can all of your people, whether it's 5 or 10 people in your business, recite your vision if I ask them that question? So the vision should be that simple, but it also needs to be inspirational so that people go, this is what I believe in and this is what I'm working towards.
Now, you mentioned generational earlier. How important is diversity in a team culture?
Diversity is going to continue to be a bigger and bigger part in terms of team cultures. Sometimes people think of diversity as just a diversity in gender. We need to look at diversity from age, gender. We need to look at it from people with different cultural backgrounds, family backgrounds. ethnicity. We need to look at people with different sexual orientation. So gender is a much bigger thing. And for me, I always think that when it comes to looking at diversity, we also need to get people that think differently. And when we get people that think differently in teams and they bring that different level of thinking and experience into a team, we are always going to get a better outcome. In fact, the results and the research shows that when we've got diverse teams, the results on the bottom line are greater. One of the things we need to do it's not only the right thing to do, it's also a great thing on your bottom line. So it makes sense financially as well as morally, I believe, that we need to really continue to create more diverse teams.
Now, in your book, you write about succession planning with a plan A, B and C. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Succession plan is a really big issue, particularly for small to medium-sized businesses. Often the business owner or the entrepreneur has started that with not a clear succession plan. And we also see this in businesses as well. It's something that I've often struggled with in the past, where when a key talent left the business for a variety of reasons, then there was a hole there in the system and nobody could really fill in that hole very quickly. So it's so important, what I call in the book, what I call plan A, B and C. Have a plan A, which is the person that's hopefully in the role and you've got the right person, the A player in the business in that role. But just in case that person leaves for whatever reason, do you have a plan B? And plan C is, if person B goes into person A slot, then hopefully the plan C can then fill in for plan B. Now, for businesses, it's sometimes a little bit more expensive to train people just in case there are some changes that happen. But I always ask the question, what is the true cost if you didn't do that? So if you didn't have that in place, then what would happen? So succession plan is really important for key roles and key talent. So there's always a backup plan, and that also reduces so much stress for business leaders and owners as well.
Absolutely. Now, leadership and management are important, of course, in any organisation, but how should business owners approach the way management is done?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I get asked that question a lot in terms of what's the definition and the difference between leadership and management. To me, a leader sets the direction. The leader might go, we're going to go from A and we're going to go to B. The manager really is there in terms of making sure that we can get to B. So the manager would go through all the details in terms of, are we going to fly? Are we going to drive? How much budget do we have? And go through all of the details to make sure that we do that on time and within budget. So when it comes to our managers, particularly in the future, I believe we need to have our managers not just managing, we also need our managers to be people that can coach our people. Because if our managers can coach people rather than them always giving them the answers, what we're doing is we're creating people that are self-sufficient. We're creating people that feel more empowered, and they're going to make better decisions, hopefully, not only in the long term, but also the short and medium term, so that they can actually go out and do their work without somebody watching or telling them what to do. So the more we can train our managers, which a lot of managers in my experience don't do very well. But if we can really train our managers to be better coaches, then we'll get better outcomes.
Before we go, Shivani, any final thoughts on attracting and retaining good people?
Look, one of the experiences I've had is I find that the very noisy, low-performing people in our businesses often end up taking up a lot of our time. They end up consuming us, not only the time we have to spend managing them, but also the energy I find it takes when we're not having to manage them. They're the ones that play off in our heads constantly about how do we take that away. And I believe that we really need to shift that. I believe that we really need to move towards spending more time with our key talent and making sure that we're loving them, we're giving them feedback, that they are the ones that are going to stay in our businesses, because it's so much more expensive to replace key talent than it is to replace key performers. And I'm, saying to business leaders and owners, let's shift our time and energy from thanking and really helping the good performers so they at least stay, and then spend less time on your low performers and manage your time better that way.
That was Shivani Gupta, CEO of Ask Shivani. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.